Hello, fall bookworms. I'm Aubrey.
And I'm Peyton.
And today we are celebrating the turn of the season, cozy fall weather, pumpkin spice, and everything nice by giving you our top 10 fall book recommendations.
Yes, so join us for a cup of coffee as we dive between these pieces.
All right.
Let's do it. All right, first things first, we have to start here because this has been the book of the last bit of summer and going into fall. I think it's only going to get more hype because number 2 is coming out soon, and that is Divine Rivals.
Yes, Divine Rivals is like the perfect blend of genres. It is like historic, it's fantasy, it's romance, there's a little bit of mystery, and the dark academia vibes in this book are on another level. Like the amount of times they are drinking tea and they're writing on their typewriters, like there's nothing better for fall than this dark academia, like rivals to lovers book.
Yeah, and I think if you want to get into dark academia, especially in the fall months, I really think this book is like perfect. It's very accessible because it's not like high fantasy where it's like very complicated and it takes a while to get into. It's a relatively short book, and I got into it pretty fast, and I think it's a good book, and I really recommend that you add it to your fall TBR.
Yes, we have a full video reviewing it that just came out last week, so you can go check that out if you want all the information. But just like a real quick, it's basically 2 journalists reporting on a fantasy version of World War I, and there's a lot of magical items. It is super whimsical and cute, and you really just fall in love with the characters, or at least I did. Peyton has some mixed thoughts, but you can hear those.
Go watch those. My hot takes. Go watch. I have some hot takes on this book. So,
Yes, Peyton really lays into it. And it's on Kindle Unlimited, which is awesome. So if you have that already, you don't have to like do anything extra. It's why we don't have the book to hold up, because Peyton and I actually bought Kindle Unlimited to read this book.
Yes.
All right.
Yeah, so the next book we are recommending, or I am recommending, is Mexican Gothic, which Aubrey has it because I'm letting her read it this fall. So there you go.
Yes.
Read it along with Aubrey. So yeah, this book, once again, all of the fall vibes, but more of a Gothic spin. What this author did that I love so much is she took Mexican traditions and culture and mixed it with that like traditional Gothic, like Frankenstein feeling, like really kind of how we always say Holly Black really stays true to like the origins of like fantasy. She did it in this book too. I forget the author's name. You're gonna have to let me know.
It is
something Garcia.
Silvia
Moreno-Garcia. Okay. Cynthia, you said?
Yes.
Okay. I was like, I don't want to mess up her name. So, anyways, she really, and I really didn't like feel the like pride for it, I guess you could say, until I read the backstory at the end of the book, and I was like, wow, she put so much research and effort into making this like a cohesive story that combines 2 different things you would never think to combine together. But long story short, this book is about a girl named Naomi and her cousin a couple months ago married into this very rich British family, and they live on top of this mountain like outside of Mexico City somewhere. Anyways, she and her cousin growing up used to be very close, and then all of a sudden her cousin just like fell off the face of the earth, and her dad's kind of like, hey, you need to go visit your cousin and see what's going on. And let's just say, when she gets to this manor, shit goes down. There's a lot of... It's a big mystery, kind of like I think 1950s whodunit kind of crazy. The inside fold of that cover is like so cool. I think if you go into... that's like the vibe.
That's gorgeous.
Isn't it?
That is.
So that kind of,
Oh
the
my
front you
God.
wouldn't think, but once you open it, like, that's kind of the vibe. So is that not fall or what?
Yeah.
Is that not fall or what? So I don't want to give away too much.
No,
but
that's
just
amazing.
know Naomi goes in there and she's like a 1950s like chain smoker. Like it's a fun time. It's a good book. I enjoyed reading it.
I'm very excited to read it, which is, yeah, like Peyton said, why I have it, and I'm going to dig into it. All right. Next, I am recommending Deadly Education. We actually talked about this book when we were going through Goodreads' top fantasy books from 2022. It wasn't the first book. It was like the last book in the series or something like that. I recently listened to the audiobook version of the Deadly Education, and I really enjoyed it. I think it's perfect for fall. It is basically Harry Potter, except everything is like fucked up. Like, this is like an adult fantasy, and like every single chapter there is some type of like monster attacking the main character. So they're at a wizarding type school and they're trying to get education. The main character is a junior and she is cynical. Like, she's not having a good time. She's barely survived this far. She's very like, the stuff that she will do and say is not like what everyone would do and say. I often was like, what are you doing, girlfriend? Because she is a pessimist. She is very like good at pushing away friends and not making connections, but she ends up like hanging out and everyone thinks that she's dating the like hero of the school who's super popular, and he puts her in like a whole new world, a whole new way to experience the school. But it feels like the magic of Harry Potter and like a magical boarding school, except there's just things out to get them, and it's just deadly.
It is a Deadly Education.
Yes.
I love that title. I think that's so fun. One of my cousins read that, and he had very mixed feelings, but I'm guessing it's because of the way you're describing the main character. I can see, like, if you can't, like, embrace that attitude, that can just be, like, the worst thing to read.
Yeah, well, and the audio, I listened to it, and like the narrator like embodied this character. Like, the sass was at a 10 level. But I think the magic was super unique. It wasn't like standard. It was very complicated and layered in like the school and the scholar vibes. So another Dark Academia vibes. If you've seen it on a bookshelf, it is beautiful, and I am going to buy it so that way I can show it off as part of my trophy collection.
I do, and I think the vibe will match your bookshelf very well. So I think I think that is great. All right, so our next here I am very excited to talk about, because we also are probably going to do a podcast episode just on this book, because in our last month's book club in our community, this was the book we read. And I do actually have this one. I never have books. And that is The Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo.
Yes. Peyton read this already before the book club, but I read it along with book club, and it is good, guys. It's everything that I thought it was gonna be, and I was really impressed. Do you want to talk about it, Peyton?
Yeah, so basically this book is, you can see how much I have annotated it. I went full in for book club because it was my second time reading it. I could really dive into it. So I'm sure if you're watching a book podcast, you've heard of The Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo. This is not a new book. This is a book that has been popular for well over a year now. But basically, this book covers the life of Evelyn Hugo. There is a frame story where this girl, Monique, who's a writer, is writing. She randomly gets assigned to this story covering Evelyn Hugo. And Evelyn Hugo is basically like, no, who is old as dirt right now, is kind of like, no, you're going to write my biography, okay?
And Evelyn Hugo's like Marilyn Monroe, like, actor, pop star, 50s, 60s icon in this world.
As you can see on the front page, very, like, a huge thing to know is, like, think of who you think in your past or past pop culture is the biggest. In my head, Marilyn Monroe pops up right away. Maybe, like, Liz Taylor or something. So, basically, this woman has lived a life, and her claim to fame is that she's had 7 husbands. So...
Yes.
This book is broken up into 7 parts, and it covers every husband. But
I love
the shit that goes down in those chapters, and if you've been on TikTok, you may know a huge spin to this book, which is like so badass and so cool, and I love women. Is that so I don't want to like spoil too much because this book is like you can easily spoil it, but just know it's kind of like a retelling of this whirlwind Hollywood famed story of this powerhouse that is literally Marilyn Monroe. So it is such a cool story. There's a lot of heartbreak, success. There's a lot of life lessons learned. And then you kind of get the frame story worked in there kind of like present day with Monique and Evelyn as like an old lady now is really cool to kind of like go back and forth.
Yeah.
Well, I think we both really enjoyed this book. I enjoyed rereading it for book club, and I do think even just the cover, I think this would be like a nice fall read.
Especially if you're not super into fantasy, like fall is where like I feel like fantasy books shine.
Yeah.
It's especially like
They're
the
so
more
cozy.
dark academia fantasy books, like amazing. But if you're not super into fantasy or you're just looking for something different, it's more literary. So it's not a romance book. I don't know what genre it would be besides just literary.
Yeah, it's just fiction. Yeah, literary fiction.
But it's beautifully written, and just like you can't say anything without spoilers.
No, but
Evelyn is a beast of a woman, and like there's so many like times when you're reading this where you're like, she is smarter than me by a trillion times, and it's such like a story of like scandals and cunning manipulation.
Manipulation. Yes, those are the best words. And the coolest thing about the way, because I've had the opportunity to read a lot of Taylor Jenkins Reid's work. Evelyn Hugo is not my favorite, but it's close up there. The best thing about her TJR's writing is that when you read her books, you feel like you're watching a movie. So if you are a very like imaginative reader, or I read in pictures, which is really weird to say out loud. But if you do that, her books are like crack. The way she writes, her imagery is just like, I say this about Emily Henry too. I think that they're really good at just like capturing a scene. And these characters just jump right off the page. So I can't say enough about this book. I think you should read it.
And it feels a lot like Gossip Girl, which
does.
I always consider a fall TV show. So
yes.
All right.
That's why I'm wearing my Gilmore Girls shirt today, because I was like, this is the best for fall racks. Okay, so let's do this again. All right, I just finished this book, and I found one of my new favorite authors, Riley Sager, the only one left.
Okay.
I read this book. I got it on a Thursday with my cousin, and he and I were like, okay, school starts on Monday. Let's try to read it. I beat him to the finish line. He's usually a much faster reader than I am. And because I finished it in 2 days. And the only other book this year that I've done that with is Fourth Wing. So
high level.
High level. Praise. This is like a 6 out of 5 stars for me. Like, this book was so good. Once again, it's a mystery, so I can't say much. But just trust me when I say that the vibes are there. Okay, I'll give you a little bit of a story. It's about this girl who is a part of this small town, and she's a nursing assistant. But recently she was fired as a nursing assistant. Kind of like a nursing assistant where like oh, I take care of the elderly. I get hired to go do like in-home help, stuff like that. Give medication, like I guess you could say like hospice care kind of too. And so she recently was let go, and there was like this whole drama, like her dad's disappointed in her, like whatever, her mom's dead. So this girl's just kind of at rock bottom, but the firm said, we will take you back, but we have to choose your assignment. So she gets assigned to the Hope Estate, which is this like, we all have these like myths growing up, like in our town, like those town myths where like there's that little rhyme or like basically, and this on the front cover, is that Lenora Hope was not convicted. She was, it's assumed that she killed her family when she was 17.
Oh.
In one night, her mom, her dad, and sister were all killed. Her mom was stabbed, her dad's throat was slit, and her sister was found hung by a rope. And she was the only one, like, she was the one that did it.
Yeah.
Like, that's what everyone knows. So, the whole town, like, the house is, like, this is why I think it's an awesome fall book. The estate is, like, on top of a cliff in Maine.
Ooh, okay.
And there's, like, the rocks and, like, the overlook and the estate, like, think, like, stone, cobblestone. But people, like, spray paint on the wall, like, Lenora Hope is a murderer and stuff like that. So, basically, our main character has to move into the estate, and her bedroom is right next to Lenora's. Because she has to take care of her. But the thing here is that Lenora can only use her left hand, and she can't speak. So going back to Divine Rivals, the only way that Lenora and our main character can communicate is with a typewriter. And so shit gets so there is help in the house, and there's just like there's these like dynamic, I don't know. So that was a lot, but I don't want to go into it too much because I want everyone to go in with an open mind the way I did, because I didn't really know anything going in, and I had so much fun. All I gotta say is Riley Sager's like mind is like, I do not know how like I don't know how you think about, I don't even know how these plot lines exist, but all of a sudden you're like, oh my god, and then even at the end of the book in the epilogue you're like, oh my god, it's so good. Actually, it got so bad that I'm gonna flash this quick. I don't want people to read this, but I have a plot chart just for this book because my boyfriend and I stayed up. My boyfriend and I stayed up till 2 a.m. trying to decipher where this was going.
That's a good mystery.
So I hope I convinced you. Think estate, think Maine in the fall, death, mystery, and our main character.
That
like,
one.
The only thing I will say is this main character, sometimes it's like, I wouldn't have done that. Like, if I hear a weird noise at night, I don't just like open the door. No one just opens the door. People like, you peep.
Yeah, that is true. I love this quote online that it's like, it's unreasonable for us to assume that the characters know what genre they're in. And so like the idea of like, you get so mad in the horror movie when the girl goes into the basement to inspect the weird noise, but it's also like they don't know that they're in a horror movie.
Now,
eventually, it sounds like this book, the girl knows that she went to this creepy house, or the guy, so maybe it doesn't work for them, but I just thought of that like.
Yes, so highly recommend. I will be reading more of Riley Sager's work this fall. I think I want to read The House Across the Lake. So I'll for like spring recs, I'll be able to be like, oh my gosh, I read another one.
Yeah, let us know which one of her books, if you are a big fan of her, like which ones we should read. I'm definitely going to be reading this book to experience it, but also so we can have a video dedicated to it and see what the fuck's on that chart that Peyton made. So all right, next up we have, last year was like the crowning fall classic. Like every bitch I knew was reading this book, myself included. Babel. You know, for a book about language, everyone pronounces it a different way, and that's not our fault. That's history's fault, and like depending on like a bunch of other shit. But anyways, Babel by An Arcane History by R.F. Kuang. I am sorry if I'm not pronouncing your name right. This book is beautiful. Like I have to start there. If you have not read this book or if you've heard anything about it, the first and last thing you should hear, well, actually isn't the fact that it's beautiful, but from someone with a creative writing minor, I have to speak about it because the skill that goes into writing a book at this level is just like beyond my comprehension. So Babel tells the story of Robin Swift at a reimagined Oxford, because in this version of Oxford, there is magic, which is like a difference that I just want in our world.
Yes.
That's the Oxford I want to go to. But in this world, in this universe, the magic is called silverworking. And basically what they do is they take the differences in translations to create stuff, which is a little like weird and complex. But it's basically if you take words in different languages, but I'll use English as the example. So if you took like beautiful and hot, okay, there's synonyms. They could be used as like translations if you like mess up a little bit. But there's like a difference in like what those words like actually like mean. And so then you take that difference and that is the magic that is produced. But instead it's using languages. So you'd write the English version of a word or any type of language and then another translation of that word. But typically in this magic system, it's English and another language. And that difference creates the magic, which is super complex, but you will learn throughout this book. This book has it has footnotes throughout the books because she does this incredibly cool thing where she acts as the narrator in the book and kind of looks at it from a meta level. So the prologue to this book, or an author's note before the book even begins, she's like, this is what I've changed about Oxford, but I get to change whatever I want because this is fiction and this is fantasy book. And she's like very like in your face about it. She also just recently published a book called Yellowface, which deals with the publishing industry, and like the point of the book is like to make the reader uncomfortable. This book is just, the point of this book should honestly to make you learn. It deals with very complex topics, but the main idea is dealing with a sense of loss of identity due to like the whitewashing of Britain to all of these people. So Robin is a Chinese boy, but he is adopted or taken in by this English professor of Oxford and kind of groomed to be used to Babel and Oxford because he knows Chinese and other languages and to access this magic. And so it deals a lot with like the power dynamics and what happens, especially in this fantasy world, when one country, when Britain gets so big, dominates, and then tries to assimilate everyone else. Right. And what happens when cultures start getting erased and identities are being stripped. It's amazing. The ending will make you cry. Oh. It's like there's so many things about this book. It's also like it's a beast to read. Like I'm not gonna lie, this book took me forever to read, and I still would recommend it. And maybe if you just like you gotta like push through it a little bit. Not that it's not interesting. There's not great things happening, but you, like I said, you're learning. And a lot of the times when I sit down, like I read fiction, so I'm not learning, so my brain's kind of off. But your brain is on when you are reading this book. But I totally think it's worth it. I think that there's so many amazing things. This cover is
beyond gorgeous.
It is. It's so
you
pretty.
can't get over it. And like all the other cover versions are just as pretty. It's a masterpiece as written on my book, and that's what it is. I feel like it's one that will be taught in like AP Lit classes.
And I feel like R.F. Kuang is the reason why we know what Taylor Swift drinks, because she is the reason. She is the reason why we know Taylor drinks Diet Coke and vodka. So.
A vodka Diet Coke, yes, which is what I ordered at the bar last time we went out for my Queen Taylor.
Yes.
And that is a great service that she has done for us.
Yes, I know Babel has and will always be on my list. It's just one of those things, it's kind of like how The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue is for me as well. It's just a lot. So you just need to like be ready. All right. So this is a joint recommendation to kind of go with the whole dark academia vibes. We are going to recommend the Atlas 6.
Yes. So I have the original self-published version of this book. Which is kind of cool. I got it right before it like left the shelves to make way for the traditionally published version, which is what Peyton has. And we do have a video about a full review of the Atlas 6, which is the first book, and the Atlas Paradox, which is the second book. It has been out. Peyton and I rushed to the bookstore to get it and then have kind of side tabled it.
Yes.
But we own it, so.
I've gotten, you can kind of see how far I've gotten into it. It's been just like the Atlas 6. Atlas Paradox is no different. It's a little hard to get into. Not that it's bad. I love Olivie Blake. I think she's an amazing author. I just think that her writing is very prosy.
Yes, the main thing to know about this book in this series is that it is pretentious as fuck writing. And you're gonna love it or hate it, and you're gonna be reading it. There's no way to not see this writing. This writing stands out, and it's a bonus to some people. Like, I'm obsessed with the vibes. I wish I was this pretentious.
Yeah.
And maybe one day I will be, but it's beautifully written. It follows 6 characters who have been initiated into the Exandrian Society, which in this world isn't gone forever, but is actually just switched into a secret society. There is magic in this world. They are basically all researchers working for the Exandrian Society, and eventually they will move into a second phase, but only 5 of them can continue. So there is a lot of academic rivalries between everyone.
Yes, and they all have their own power, I guess you could say.
Yes.
Which is really fun to kind of learn about the magic system. Olivie Blake does this really cool thing in all of her books, because it's in my TBR pile. I just got one for my enemy, but she always hires amazingly talented artists to draw in her books. So reading Olivie Blake is just a vibe. And that's kind of how I feel like R.F. Kuang is. That's how I feel V. Schwab is.
You have to be ready for the aesthetic.
Yeah,
every character art.
You can kind of see the difference between self-published and. But
the character art jumps off in the traditionally published version.
It is so pretty, and it doesn't stop with the Atlas Paradox either. So there's just. It's so good. It's so pretty, beautiful, and I think the Atlas 6, the only time to read the Atlas 6 is in the fall. That is the only time. So who knows? I may just pick this up and just be like, we're getting it done. So
you need to be at a bar and smoking a cigarette, and there's fall leaves out.
Yes.
And you have a trench coat on. That is actually. You need to method act consume this book. But once you do, like, it is good. Like, it's very character-based stories. Not a lot happens until the very end where everything's happening. But like, these characters are all super complex. They're almost all morally gray. I think there's only one character that I would consider not morally gray. They make questionable decisions. It's sexy. It's amazing.
I find, weirdly, actually, people that love romance books that are character-driven like the Atlas 6, because I went into it thinking it was, like, fantasy, dark academia is going to be a huge plot, but it's not. It's really diving into each individual character. So if, like, that's your cup of tea, like, the Atlas 6 was made for you.
And just like Deadly Education, it happens in a school-like setting. So you get those dark academia fantasy vibes, which is the best kind of dark academia, when it's also fantasy, because then you're not just reading about like real life academia, but instead like fun magic academia.
Right. All right. My last, like, what I'm choosing to recommend is a book that I read for the 24-hour reading vlog, which if you haven't seen, it is so funny. It is so fun. Crazy, like, chaotic night we all had.
It's a mess.
Yes. So that is Before the Coffee Gets Cold. I don't want to mess up.
Yes.
This is a translated novel. Toshikazu Kawaguchi, maybe that's how you say it. It's a beautiful name. So this is actually a series, and I've seen it in Barnes & Noble. I've seen some of my, like, literary fic booktubers talk about it, and it's short, which was appealing for reading something in 24 hours. And it's pretty, and it's like a small coffee table book, and I was like, what a statement piece. I just want it.
It's so cute.
There's a cat on it. So I was like, yes. The cool thing about this book, okay, I finished it. I loved it. I think I gave it like 4.5, 5 stars. I really, really enjoyed this book. It has 4, I believe, short stories in it, and it all takes place in the same cafe. And this cafe has a kind of a legend attached to it that brings people coming to it, and it is that you can visit the past or the future, but mostly the past, to talk to anyone you want to. But the rule is that they must have been in the cafe before. So the first one is about a couple. The second one's about a mother and daughter. There's sisters. Like, there's an old couple, and the old couple one is my favorite because, just for an example, he has dementia now. And he doesn't know his wife. He doesn't know anything. And she uses her opportunity to go back in time to talk to him before he got his dementia. The dementia, like, fully set in, and he forgot. So it's like, but it also has this cool spin to it where you have to drink the coffee before it gets cold, or you are stuck as there's this ghost. There's this ghost in the cafe that sits there. And the only time and the only opportunity you have to go visit the past is when the ghost, it's this old lady, gets up and goes to the bathroom. That's your opportunity to sit down. The barista pours the coffee, and she just says, drink it before it gets cold. Because if you don't drink it before it gets cold, you are now the ghost that has to sit there until someone else forgets. So that doesn't happen in this book. I know there are other books, like other tales from the cafe and stuff, so I wonder if, like, it'd be cool to go and figure out why she is the ghost, like why she didn't drink the coffee. So it's just like, and it's short stories, right? So it's a fast-paced read. It's so cozy. It's so fun. I think it's also nice to kind of like R.F. Kuang too, is kind of tap into, like, I don't want to say world literature, but just get out of the white box we usually put ourselves in with literature. So it's kind of cool to like I said, this is translated, and it's very popular, and I really, really enjoyed it. It was heartbreakingly amazing. Before the Coffee Gets Cold. It's a fun book to have in your house too. Like, look at that. I love it.
That's like bragging rights book. That's actually how I feel about Babel as well. is it's like the kind of book where it's like, I read this, guys. I am that bitch.
It's a cute book to just say you've kind of dipped into.
Yeah.
But Aubrey's next selection, I think, is swag worthy.
Oh, I changed it. I'm not doing.
Oh,
I'm
no.
not doing Brandon Sanderson.
All right, what did you change it to? I thought she was going Brandon Sanderson, but she's not.
I was gonna do Brandon Sanderson, and that's what's still written on our outline.
Yeah.
But none of them gave me like complete fall vibes. Okay. And so I was like, I think we're gonna cover Tress in the Emerald Sea soon.
Yes.
And so that is when I can give, because I have so many thoughts about Brandon Sanderson. So I will definitely be getting to him. But today I'm gonna talk about Victoria Aveyard, who I follow on TikTok. You should follow on TikTok. And she's actually stitched me and duetted me twice. So
she's like the biggest TikToker. She is the book talker.
But her book Realmbreaker, which is her fantasy, like high fantasy series, like Red Queen is which is her more popular series that came out a good bit ago. It's more like fantasy meets like the X-Men. This is super high fantasy. It has the most gorgeous map you will have ever seen in your life, actually. Oh, I gotta get the dust jacket off so I can show you the beauty of this map.
I've never seen a map like that.
Jaw-dropping. So basically, Realmbreaker, Victoria Aveyard talks about this a lot, is she was obsessed with Lord of the Rings as a kid, as so many fantasy nerds are, falling in love with Legolas or Aragorn. And she loved that story. But Lord of the Rings, while Tolkien is the father of high fantasy, and we give credit to the amazing series that he has created, it is not made for everyone. And most people, unless you are a straight white guy, cannot see themselves in that story. It is written in the 50s, and there's more female characters than there could be, but for like other books written at the time. But it's a product of its time.
Yeah.
And while it's amazing, it's not consumable at the same way that she kind of wished it was. So her going into Realmbreaker was to write a Lord of the Rings styled story, but where she could see herself in characters and where other people could see themselves in these different characters. It is beautiful. I love Victoria Aveyard's writing. She very much balances that like sweet spot where it's about the book you're reading and you're not getting distracted by the prose. It's not like high literary like some of our other recommendations in this video have been, but instead it's just like put together very nicely. It's very clean, beautiful. It's kind of the book that like you'd want to highlight stuff, but it's not about highlighting stuff. So it follows the main character, Coraine, and she is the daughter of a pirate, like a famous pirate, but her mom won't take her on adventures. Instead, she's left behind at the port city, tucked away and safe, as her mom goes off and is this world-renowned pirate. However, her dad was actually one of the this like old ancient breed of blood, and the prologue to this book is the most epic battle sequence where the heroes fail. And so the book is the idea of there's this main villain, and there's these spindles, which are portals to other realms that are being opened, and monsters are coming in and flooding this world. And in the prologue, a bunch, like the greatest heroes of the realm, gather together, and they go to fight the villain, and they fail epically. And so the story picks up with Coraine, and her dad was like the main hero who dies in the prologue. And this is prologue stuff, so it's not super spoilers, don't come for me.
but instead she is now going on this journey to save the world, and it's kind of like the B team attempting to save the world.
Yeah.
It gives vibes like Guardian Galaxy meets Lord of the Rings. It is so much fun. There are so many amazing characters in here that you just want to root for. Victoria Aveyard is known for heartbreaking endings. So Fatebreaker, the last book in the series, comes out early next year, and I am terrified. She was posting on TikToks about like as she was writing it and just turned in the final draft, and she was looking a little too happy, guys. She was looking a little too happy. A little concerned. But I love Victoria Aveyard. She does a great job of adding like conflict and combat and magic. She always gives just the right amount of romance where you can always see it. It's not the point of the story. The point of the story is this adventure and journey. But she feeds you, okay? Like you can
She nourishes you. Yeah.
I really appreciate that. I'm a girl who like I want a little bit of fantasy. I want a little bit of romance in my fantasy to like propel me
agreed.
Onward. And Victoria Aveyard hits that sweet spot. So, Realm Breaker.
I have to add that to my TBR.
Yeah.
Okay.
As someone who refuses to read Lord of the Rings, you should read this instead.
Yeah, because I'm not doing that. Okay, so we are gonna jump into a fan favorite here. Yes. It feels nostalgic for some reason.
I think it came out in like 2010, so. But you just read it, like what, 2 years ago, maybe?
Yeah, a year and a half ago, maybe.
How long have we been friends?
I don't know. Yeah, I'm like, I don't know. It feels like it feels a lifetime ago, guys. It really does. It feels like a lifetime ago. Okay, so we are recommending Cassandra Clare's Infernal Devices.
Infernal Devices.
All three of them.
Clockwork books. Yes. You need to read this series, guys. This is like, if you are scared to get into the Shadowhunter world, if you've heard about it, especially because of the other series, Mortal Instruments, and you've heard things and you're like, I don't know, you need to read these books. They are beautiful. They are next level. They are like, you want to cry when you think about them because you're just in love with them. It's just the vibes. Okay, let's get into it. This is urban fantasy, which means that it takes place in our world, except there is a bunch of fantasy shit going on. It's also a period book, so it takes place in the late 1790s, I think, 1780s.
I think so.
And so it is the world of Shadowhunters. So if you know anything about that, the magic system, there's kind of the Shadowhunters, which are angel-blooded humans who draw runes on their skins, which are magical tattoos, so they can kill demons. The world also has warlocks, vampires, werewolves, and the Fae.
Yes.
It's beautiful. The main characters are always the Shadowhunters, and they go to institutes. In this book, there is Tessa Gray, who is not a Shadowhunter, or doesn't think she's a Shadowhunter, and she's got a big plot about finding out who she really is.
Yes.
But it's a period Shadowhunter book, which makes me love it even more. Cassandra Clare is my favorite author. I have all of her books, and they just take up, you can't see it, but the entire top shelf of my bookshelf is just Cassandra Clare books, because it's so beautiful. Everything she does, I will read.
So I have not read all of the Shadowhunter series. There are a lot. By the way, this takes place in 1878. I had to take a peek because I was like, I don't know. All I know is it's old.
I knew it was right around the turn, but because the next series, there's a series that takes place with the kids of the ones who survived this trilogy, and I knew that was in like the 10s, but it's 1910s and not 1810s. Yeah, that makes more sense.
Yeah. So, anyways, everyone I talked to, and I did read a bit of the Mortal Instruments series. I will say, and everyone will tell you this, everyone's favorite is the Infernal Devices. There's something so cozy, so amazing, so heartbreaking the way that the characters are written. Tessa is my favorite, so far at least, character in all of the, Shadowhunters novels. I'm obsessed with the characters. This story is so much fun. Like I said, everyone I talk to, they're like, Infernal Devices. Like,
yes,
that is where you are going to fall in love with Cassandra's writing.
Yeah, she does love triangles like nobody's business.
Yeah.
And like there's a big love triangle plot in this book, and if I say that and you're like, I hate love triangles, you don't hate Cassandra Clare's love triangles. Like she just puts something different in it. And so in these series, it is a love triangle, but the boys are like best. Like they're not gay, they're not in love with each other that way, but they are like platonic soulmates. Like soul crushingly platonically in love with one another, the boys. And so it's almost like there's this love triangle going on, but they're not in competition with one another.
Right.
They're all just like beautifully pining after one another, and it's so amazing. I
don't even like the plot. I don't want to spoil too many things.
Just read
but
it.
you just will know that you will walk away from this book like being like fed on another level.
Yes. So feed yourself this fall and read the Infernal Devices. I love them, and if I knew going forward every book would make me feel this way, I think I would have already read them all. But if you do the paperback, like, look how nicely.
Yes. Oh, all
sexy.
Of Cassandra Clare's Shadowhunter books come in that version where it's.
Yeah, I'm looking at my Mortal Instruments series right now, and they all line up, and it looks so nice.
And it looks so good. Yes, and like we kind of mentioned, this series, the Shadowhunter world, is much bigger than this trilogy. So if you fall in love with this, the Mortal Instruments, which is the first published books in publishing order, not time-wise order, is a different beast of its own, and it's definitely, you can tell that they are her first books, but you have to read it for Magnus. And there's so many good characters, but if you fall in love with it and want more, there is the Last Hour series, which, like I said, follows the kids of people from the Infernal Devices series. Then there's the Mortal Instruments, which is like 8-9 books long, and has some amazing moments once you get over like one little hurdle. And it's still a great book. It's just not as good.
Yeah.
And then there is like another series that happens more in like 2012, and that is beautiful. Starts with Lady Midnight, and I cannot think of what it's called right now. The Dark Artifices. And Wicked Powers comes out later, which is the final series in the Shadowhunter world, and I'm gonna cry my eyes out when it's over.
Finishing it up.
I know. She has an October Swordcatcher, which is a new high fantasy
I heard
book,
about that.
I'm excited to read. I just want her to keep producing Shadowhunter books selfishly. So.
I know. It's like your whole life,
Yeah.
Oh, all right, everyone.
All right.
That is all we have time for today. I also am creating my fall TBR, so I want to know what your favorite fall books are. Do you prefer a certain genre? Of course, we dove headfirst into fantasy, dark academia vibe. So, like, what, did we convince you at all? What of this list? I want to know which one you will be adding. If you should just add all of them. But of course, if you'd like us to review anything else or have any recommendations, any challenges, we love the vlog. Let us know. We would love to hear them.
All right, guys. Thank you so much for joining us, and happy reading.